To just talk about some of these things right in here that I've been doing. She mentioned the head coaching and the technical director. When I got to U.S. Soccer in 2000, we had a women's team, an under-20 team, and an under-16 team. And when I left, we had 6 youth national teams. So building the team at U.S. Soccer was part of my goal 10 years ago. You'll see there's the plane that we mentioned. Under here, the last 4 years, I've been working for the U.S. Olympic Committee. And I just wanted to mention that briefly because that has been some of the most profound growth that I've experienced in my sport career. First 15 years of my life as a player, then 15 years as a coach, and then I went over to the administrative side, and I've learned more in the last 4 years working for the Olympic Committee than I did as a really young head coach. And so I'll try to weave some of that in there tonight. You'll see in the Olympic movement, I worked with 24 different sports, winter and summer, men and women, and Olympic and Paralympic athletes and coaches. And basically building a team of sports psychologists, physiologists, biomechanists, myself, a strength coach, and going to meet with our Olympic and Paralympic sports, their leadership, and helping them build their team. Everything from their coaching staff to their support staff to the actual team that would perform in either the Olympics or the Paralympics. So that's what I used to do the last 4 years and travel around and basically share best practices. And I might mention it later, but while I'm thinking about it. So for example, curling was a sport that I would work with. I didn't have any knowledge in curling. But there were things I knew we could do as a team to help curling further their performance on the ice. And there were similarities between working with curling as there were with beach volleyball, for example. Most people, call me crazy, would not put those two together. Curling on the ice, beach volleyball. But there's a lot of best practices. And that's what I essentially did for the last 4 years. So when I was a young head coach, I did everything. I recruited, I did the travel, I did the equipment, I did literally everything for hours. And I worked 16-hour days. When I became an older, wiser coach, I was much better at delegating. Okay? And when you delegate, you activate the people that work with you on your team. You activate them to work and be engaged in what they're doing. Same with young players and young athletes. If we're coaching a team and we don't delegate them responsibility for carrying the bibs and the cones and the flags, and delegate responsibility for getting the balls pumped up every 4 or 5 days because they lose air, and we don't delegate responsibility to do the warm-up or the cool-down, then you're sort of beheading them, and you're the only one with a brain and the only one allowed to think, and consequently they don't grow. So activate and engage your team. I knew what my mission was as a coach. I knew what my mission was when I first got to U.S. Soccer. I wrote a position paper that essentially got my foot in the door for an interview. So that's how I got the U.S. Olympic team job. Yes, I was a college coach. Yes, I was on an upward trajectory, and I had a lot of experiences at youth, national team, assistant coaches, youth national team head coach. I was a good candidate, but I probably wasn't the most experienced candidate that they interviewed. But my vision got me that job 11 years ago this month, actually. So define your vision. Okay? You should always ask yourself, what's the goal? What is the vision and what's the mission? John F. Kennedy said we're going to the moon by the end of the 60s. He didn't get caught up with how. Trust me, our president wasn't thinking how. He just said that's the vision. Then he employed people to figure out the how. We in coaching, we in education, we often have to do both, the vision and the mission. So whether I'm talking to coaches in the room or administrators, department chairs, what is the vision, what is the mission? Because if you don't know the vision or mission, you'll never get there. If you're at odds, like in soccer, do we develop from the top down or should we develop from the bottom up? If we don't figure out the vision in women's soccer in the next, I'd say, 6 months to a year, we're going to be, this is my analogy, we are so big right now. Okay, we're the second largest sport in the country in terms of youth participation. We're the wealthiest sport in the country in terms of participation. All right, the NFL and all of those guys, but the NFL is an Olympic sport, right? They call themselves world champions. They don't even leave the country. I mean, what's that about? And then sometimes when they do, they go play another team from our country. World champion. But with regards to your vision and mission, if you don't know it, how are you going to get people behind you? If it isn't clear, how do you get everybody on the same boat? U.S. soccer, to me, is like this huge ship. And we got thousands of players, millions of players. We have thousands of coaches in there rowing the boat like this, rowing the boat like this. The problem is we've got such a nice, big, powerful boat. Their oars aren't even touching the water. So we're going to try to define the vision and the mission and the philosophy for soccer and get more people behind us. Pathway to success, review last year. Last season, last year, last academic year, last cycle, whatever it is. When you're done, sit down with people, challenge each other and say, what do we do well? What do we need to improve upon? What do we want to layer in next year? What can we steal from the business world? What can we steal from the sports world? What models can we consider? Who can we talk to that might stretch our brain a little bit? And review last season. And then analyze the competition. So if you're the West Virginia soccer team, what did you do well? What do you need to improve upon? Where can you improve? And what is James Madison doing that you may be able to steal? What's University of Pittsburgh doing that you may be able to steal? Or St. John's, what can you steal from them? Because I don't think all of us, or I should say all of us are smarter than one of us. So if there's one coach and just one philosophy or one opinion, we don't challenge each other enough. So what is the competition doing that we can steal? Specifically talking to coaches in the room, I would assume professors, but I don't really live in that world too often, but use a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly plan. Okay, a daily, monthly, weekly plan. Too many coaches, too many leaders walk into the room or jot some notes down before they get into the room, and then they start winging it a little bit. And some of the best practices we're teaching at the Olympic Committee now is to have lesson plans built out before you walk in the room. Coaching plans built out, printed out, and handed to your assistant coaches before you step out on the field.